Welcome to Travel Again Presents, the weekly travel roundup covering the headwinds and tailwinds impacting the business of travel. Please welcome our hosts, Mike McCormick and Ed Silver. Hello, Mike. How you doing?
Good, Ed. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. We are on episode 6 of season 2. It's crazy. We're just rolling through this season.
We are indeed.
All right. So the last couple episodes, I've given an update on the Asheville area. So if it's all good with you, I'll just give a quick update on the conditions on the ground here in Asheville, Mike.
Yeah, that's great. I think you should.
Okay. So as we talked about last episode, potable water or drinkable water is still probably the largest issue in the area. But, fresh drinking water is available everywhere you go. It just isn't coming out of your faucets, obviously. Meaning you can get it from FEMA stations. There are volunteer areas. All you do is drive up and they put tons of gallons of water in to your trunk and you drive away. Those FEMA stations, by the way, they also have, meal ready plans. They have doctors on staff. They have fresh showers for those who are struggling to shower in the water. And so water is clearly still our biggest issue here in the area. But Mike, the interesting thing is restaurants are starting to open. They're limited hours, limited capacity. And obviously, some of them have, different menus because they don't have fresh water and some of them do have fresh water. So it just depends. And then kind of some big news in the area, the Biltmore Estate, which is a major tourist attraction. It did open this week. They're a couple days into the opening. I haven't heard any news about how that's going. But they are on a well, and so they have fresh drinking water on site. And so it's really nice to have the Biltmore Estate opening back up. Last, but not least, there is some debate amongst tourism leaders here about whether it's really too soon to ask people to come visit. Indeed, sort of in my opinion, I think it's a little soon, but I know how desperate these businesses are to get visitors back in their stores and restaurants. So if you do plan on visiting, just set your expectations properly. Tread lightly, tip generously, and remember, many of these people, just went through, some pretty harrowing experiences. So tread lightly and be kind to everyone around. And I guess the only other thing, like I said last week, for those not in the area, not in Western North Carolina, that want to help, please do consider donating to the American Red Cross. It's where we recommend that you funnel any help you want, because that'll also help people from the other hurricane. And so if you're not familiar with that, it's simply redcross.org and donate. And that's the update from the ground, Mike.
Well, thanks for that. And I think it's good to keep everybody posted just on the progress. And interesting, kind of balance with tourism part, because again, and certainly the Biltmore Estate opening is a really good kind of bellwether for the beginning of a recovery effort, but it's going to take some time. And I think that's great advice, just if you do come, understand and be respectful of the situation and manage your expectations, of course.
Yep. I think that's key. Okay, Mike, let's get rolling with episode 6, on to the news. The first article I pulled, I think we both saw this around midnight last night. Boeing union votes to end the strike. The machinists to return to work after ratifying a contract with a 38% pay raise. That's, I think, only 2% less than what they were looking for, and some other interesting tidbits there, Mike. But we've been covering Boeing for a long time. So any context here for our listeners?
Well, no, just other than the same thing we said before and have been saying all along, that the strike had to get settled. It's critical for the industry, critical for aircraft, critical for the whole expansion, continued expansion, health growth of the industry, replacing old aircraft, et cetera, et cetera. All the major airlines are have their orders, they're waiting, and we need to produce quality aircraft. Boeing is a key part and kind of a bellwether for the overall economy too, for here in the States. What more can you say? It had to get done. Deal had to get done. Glad it did. Let's move forward and get back to, really the real work at hand, which is producing high quality, reliable aircraft and making the necessary changes within Boeing to ensure that happens.
All right. I agree with all that, Mike. Good to see that end. So that's great. The next one I pulled is an article from the Wall Street Journal. Tech giants see AI bets starting to pay off. We've talked a lot about this on the podcast, and obviously this has been news we've been tracking. Some of the world's biggest tech companies showed this week how the tens of billions of dollars they have bet on AI boom are starting to pay off. They also warned bigger investments are coming. If you could imagine bigger investments in this industry than what are happening right now, hold on to your hat because they are on the way. So, for the travel industry and just the broader market, Mike, any context here for our listeners?
Well, I think we talked about this before. First off, Microsoft, I mean, you're talking orders of magnitude more on capital expenditure. Microsoft said that they were spending, basically 4x what they were previously spending in CapEx to invest in, primarily AI development. So that's a huge, obviously huge expenditure. There's still questions about, yes, starting to pay off is one thing, but actually returning, on that investment will be years off. But I think for travel specifically, we know things are coming that, we're starting to see just the beginnings of the impact it can have on the whole travel booking arranging process, right? And again, really just, again, probably just a toe in the water right now for the industry and some of the ways we're seeing that impact. Most of that is in kind of some enhanced maybe connection with customer, a little bit of maybe service delivery, taking out a pain point, but not the real type of overhaul that we kind of see coming on the horizon. We've started advising customers and clients on their AI game plan, which again, you really need to be thinking about this, not just the immediate short-term kind of, again, incremental improvements, but really stepping back and taking a look at how to look at this longer term and how you're going to leverage, I guess investments made by some of the big companies and how that gets worked into your game plan as a company, but also the things you're going to be doing, spending money on. I mean, clearly, very few companies have Microsoft, Google type budgets, Apple budgets. Of course, we're going to follow their lead, but how you leverage that technology, those capabilities, being smart, being first, those are really important things to be thinking about and putting into a game plan. So, I mean, look, we're going to continue to keep this, high on our list of things that we'll be watching for the industry. And again, I just think, it's going to get really interesting in the coming years, and should have a pretty, dramatic impact on travel distribution in general over time.
Agree on all that. I do hope to see more than just the big companies and the Magnificent Seven start to see
Right.
ROI come together. I think that's key to the next phase. I don't think it's a surprise the large giants with cloud computing capability are starting to see those bets pay off as people pay for more AI capabilities. But mid-sized, smaller firms, we need to see some ROI there as well, Mike. I think that's what's next.
Yep.
Okay, next article I pulled partly because we were in Vegas together last week.
Yes, we were.
And I also thought it was an interesting one. MGM Resorts sees healthy Vegas demand despite heat wave hit F1 race slowdown. So the MGM Resorts sees strong demand at its Vegas resorts continuing through year end despite some performance hiccups in July and a more muted interest in the Las Vegas Formula One race in November. Quote, July was pretty bad for the entire community, including us, said CEO Bill Hornbuckle on Wednesday during an earnings call. We had 8 days in a row of 120-degree heat, compounded with major highway being relatively closed for 3 days due to a truck rollover. The quarter got better as it went along. So we were in Vegas. We did see some of the F1 formula kind of structures there, Mike. But any thoughts on the Vegas demand, even despite some of those setbacks?
Well, this is one of those articles that on the surface, when you read the headline, you're like, oh, okay, just, another report on, earnings and results, no big deal. But for us, like you said, intersection of a lot of things that we can tackle here. I mean, one is just, again, overall health of the industry. Vegas is a bellwether for leisure. That's, all looks very healthy. That's good. But we were out for the Money 2020 conference on a whole different set of issues around payment and around, how potentially some legislative efforts could really derail our industry. So we were there working on a lot of those issues. But while we were there, yeah, to your point about sometimes, right, Vegas made a big investment in having Formula One come to the city and do the race on a 3+ mile track, literally through the city. So they have to every year, they've got a 10-year deal, I guess, with a 3-year kind of commitment and then a review and an out after that. We learned that from our cab driver, by the way, but which we verified, which I thought was very funny. But also the fact that they have to build all this infrastructure to be able to support it. And then it disrupts, the locals are pissed off because all the disruption while they have to build this, all the build up the whole track and all the grandstands and all this stuff. Okay. So that causes those issues. But then the other problem is that I think the expectation was, hey, and the understanding was, hey, look, we're going to have this Formula One kind of race crowd. We're going to draw in a whole new set of Vegas vacationers and visitors, right, from overseas, where Formula One is even more popular than here in the States, and create a whole new category. This would be great. The problem and the unintended consequence is that it's had an impact and softened some of the regular Vegas visitors, because people are like, it's too, I'm not going to go during that. It'll be disruptive. Just the thought of like trying to maneuver while you've got all this disruption to traffic and everything in town, so our people were deferring going that might have gone otherwise, and were they basically just replacing new visitors with old visitors, et cetera. So I think some of it is a little bit up in the air. There is a lot of discussion. We met with some Vegas officials while we were there and got some interesting take on it. I think the overall is positive still, but I think there are again some unintended consequences there that people are still dealing with. But the other thing, just the little part about the cab driver and all that. But what I'm always amazed by, and it is really something, how much even people outside of our industry really foul tourism, and so particularly in Vegas, because it's all about that, right? But I think in most areas, you're talking about tourism in Nashville and all the impact and how that, how much of it, we know it because we work in the industry, but how much this drives over the overall economy, how much it drives just, commerce in general, and how important it is. And we need to be really mindful of and protect and make sure that we're looking out for our industry in that respect. Can't take it for granted. We saw what happened during the pandemic. We're finally back to a place where we're healthy as an industry and an economy again. So again, we're always, you and I mean, certainly, and others too, or, we're always on the lookout for things that are going to have a negative impact. But just thought there was a lot to unpack here. It was really interesting, story. And if we need more advice on that, we'll of course contact our cab driver and see what he has to say.
He knew what was going on. All right,
Mike.
Thanks. He did. He knew the scene. All right, Mike. Thanks for that. And we will be right back with our guest. Mike, thanks to our sponsor, Safe Travel RX, an app that takes the worry off your itinerary, providing travel peace of mind with emergency response components, travel security, and risk management, especially for those traveling internationally. It includes 24/7 global concierge assistance. Landed in the hospital in China, forgot your prescription, wallet stolen? Safe Travel RX is your prescription for better, safer travel. Download it today to discover the power of Safe Travel RX and reach out to them if you have interest in offering this tool to your travelers to provide them the duty of care you are required to provide. Safe Travel RX, your prescription for better travel. All right, Mike, and now on to our guest. Please join me in welcoming Steve Sear. Steve is Executive Vice President, Global Sales and Distribution for Delta Airlines. Steve, as EVP of Global Sales Distribution, leads the teams that oversee worldwide customer relationships and programs with corporations, travel management companies, distribution partners, and cargo logistic providers. Prior to his current role, Steve served as Delta's President International, where he was responsible for the airline's Asia Pacific, Atlantic, Latin regions, as well as Delta's Global Alliance strategy, including SkyTeam leadership and joint venture partner development. Steve currently sits on the board of governors for Junior Achievements Worldwide, having previously served on the board of directors for Virgin Atlantic Airways, board of directors for United Way of Greater Atlanta, as well as the board of visitors for DePaul University. He is a graduate of Leadership Atlanta and is active at the GBTA, where we got to know Steve. Please welcome to the stage, Steve Sear.
Gentlemen,
Hey, Steve.
thanks for hosting me. You picked
Nice
the slowest. You picked the slowest media day of the year, election day.
But we aim for it.
Perfect timing, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. Actually, literally, there's nothing happening on the news whatsoever that's of any interest at all to anyone until around 7 o'clock tonight, and then you tune in.
I loved your three stories. One, it's congrats to Boeing. We desperately want and need them to be the best in the world at what they do, and it's great not only for our industry but for our country is thinking about elections. So it's great to see that. And on a personal note, the new CEO Kelly Ortberg is from Dubuque, Iowa, where my dad is from. So there's not a lot of people that can claim that.
That's
those Dubuque roots. AI obviously will be the talk for forever, and we'll probably touch on that a little bit later. And then Vegas, Mike, you said it's sort of a bellwether for leisure. It's also a bellwether for business. When you think about business on the hybrid, the corporate travelers that are not flying on their corporate designators when they're on leisure, that's close to 200% recovered, and they're going to places like Vegas and leisure destinations. They're bringing their spouse and partners and families. That's a really good segment for us. So it's sort of a change. And Ed Bastian, to tell you how different things are, our CEO will be presenting. He's the keynote speaker at the Sphere for this CES show.
Oh, that's right.
In January.
See that.
So there might be some funny looking Delta things on the Sphere.
That'd be awesome.
A little bit of that. So
we got a taste of the Sphere while we were there. We got it one afternoon free. It was very cool.
That's great. Awesome.
Hey, one thing before we get started too, Steve, I see you're on your board of Junior Achievement.
Yep.
I won Best Salesman of the Year Junior Achievement when I was in high school. Or I guess I was in 10th grade. Yep.
I will tell that story. I'm heading to London tomorrow night for the board meeting over there. So it's a great organization. It's it fits right into what I like personally, which is I focus a lot on education and kids, and that fits right into Delta's core pillar as well. So it's a great fit on a global scale. We've got 31 different chapters that Delta supports around the world, and it's a great organization. So.
I really enjoyed it. And it was great for teamwork and meet and also being able to meet like a whole range of kids outside of your school and outside of your normal. It was really terrific. So
anyway, congrats. You got to put that trophy up on your shelf.
I still have it. I'll dig it out.
Okay, good.
Next episode.
So Ed mentioned about knowing you from our GBTA days, but you and I actually know each other from way back and over the years. And when you start, your start with Delta actually was through Northwest, because you were part of the Northwest family, and then key part of the whole integration team. I remember when you were going through those couple of years of integration, it was no easy feat, man. But to your credit, and I think to both organizations' credit, you really set the bar for how that kind of mega integration needed to get done, because you came away and boy, and you look today, you kind of you end up taking the best of both. And that was because man, we've seen a lot of, not just in the airline industry, but just generally, look, mergers are hard, man, and integrations are hard. But as you kind of reflect back on all of it, was this the vision ultimately? Is it kind of realized? Because certainly Delta is the market leader now. Any thoughts or reflections, surprises?
Thanks. It's some sort of combination of elation and PTSD. It is really reflecting back. I even joined this industry after grad school because it's global, competitive, and complex. It has exceeded every expectation from that dynamic. And whether it's bankruptcy, I did bankruptcy consulting prior to grad school, so I thought that would be my my scope in life. Little did I know I'd be on the commercial side for most of
Right.
it. And love every single second of it. But the merger, we set out to wanted to be like the U.S. leading airline, leveraging our people, and I think that's one of the key things that Delta brought. And then when we executed it, it came down to the people. And when you have a service DNA, combined with I think one of the most important things we did was put the profit sharing program in place. Industry first, industry leading, still probably the world's best profit sharing program from any industry. It became really powerful, and the people actually made it happen. I mean, we all were heads down because it was at the time, I think the biggest merger certainly in the U.S. airline industry, and one of the biggest in the world. So it was like, hey guys, don't get distracted, stay focused and execute. And I think to everybody's credit, that kind of happened. And when you take care of your people, they take care of your customers. That in essence takes care of your stakeholders, and we were able to kind of get through it. So we never take it for granted. It was super hard, but it was a big journey because veterans, we know what our history was, and I likened it to 3 pillars. First, on operational reliability, Delta and Northwest were like at or near the bottom. I can't even say how low we were, but we did not run a very good operation. And so we needed to fix that. And I remember the meetings where that was going to be mission first, of course, safety. But we have to run a good airline because that builds trust and consistency. And that, by the way, when you do that, everything else starts to work commercially. Right. From a trust perspective, you have to run a great operation. And to that extent, we continue to where we put our investments, whether it's even on the sales side, where all of our corporate agreements have an operational performance guarantee that we're going to outperform our 2 biggest competitors here in the U.S. And we never have to even worry about it. The distance is so great. And in fact, we even gave them tools, our corporate partners, that lets them track if they had chosen another carrier, how many tens of thousands of additional delays, cancellations, extra costs, let alone traveler friction that occurs in that environment. So it's something that we're still super proud of, and you can always count us to be at the top. And then on the second pillar really is about our network. When we put our 2 hubs, our 2 hub networks together, Northwest and Delta, we were a little thin in some of the big coastal business markets, and we didn't really have a presence in London. We had Gatwick. So, when we started to put together more of we have to build out New York, we have to build out Boston, LA, Seattle. Then all of a sudden we had big business centers that were gateways to international that complemented some really strong, Atlanta, Salt Lake City, mini Detroit. So we ended up with a really robust domestic network, complemented then over time with making purchases in Virgin to get access to London Heathrow slots, our efforts with Air Mexico, putting us squarely into Mexico City as a hub, even more recently with LATAM, the biggest carrier in South America, filling that void. Incheon with Korean, I would argue the best connecting complex in all of Asia. It's just so all of a sudden we had a domestic network that we had to redesign versus just put it together, and really build out our partner networks to provide that.
I think that taking the ownership stake in your partners, where you could, even minority stakes, I think was really smart. I mean, back to your, job one, which is the operational piece and like having a stake in the game with them that's deeper than, hey, look, alliances are great, but again, if you're really relying on that consistency through the entire network, ownership helps a lot, right? Or having a stake,
because you're at the board level.
Yeah.
Some of the first projects were blocking and tackling. We call it seams reduction. So
right,
we laid out a big grid of like 50 must-haves if we're going to have a partnership. Everything from booking and seat access on your displays, and just making sure everybody aligned. And then on a bigger note, it's, well, how about getting the same or similar products on aircraft, like a business class, and then a Delta Premium Select, and then Comfort Plus, let alone main cabin. And then all the carriers, as we align around that, that's making the experience for our travelers, which are heavy business travelers, see a more consistent product when they're traveling around the globe. So that's where I think at the ownership level, it's really helped, because those are long-term sort of projects and decisions when you're talking aircraft and configuration. So getting that early and consistent I think has helped us.
Well, so under your umbrella now, including all this, is of course, like the pricing strategy. We talk a lot about NDC and the future of kind of dynamic offers, pricing, how that'll get done. Delta, I would say was more patient. I think in the earlier part, there might have been some frustration, like Delta's late to the game. As it kind of turned out, given certainly Americans' troubles and having to retrench, but I think this is a slow and steady wins the race kind of approach.
It was a very wise approach, really.
It ended up being wise, right? But where do you see that all going? Because for just observing, I mean, look, we've worked with a number of clients in the space around these issues, and it is a tough one, because on one hand you see the promise of it, but what it takes to get there, and then ultimately for it to finally benefit a customer, how do you see that playing out for Delta and for the industry? Yeah.
Look at it. It's not like it's a project. I mean, this was EDIFACT wasn't created in a day.
Right.
So, but I liken it back to our approach that we've taken actually since the merger, to your point about reflecting back. We had this model called listen, act, listen. And, when we merged our companies, for example, in the sales area and distribution area, we took the best of both. Very hard, but we ended up, I would argue, with an A team. But then we focus on the customer. It's like, well, we don't get to tell them what to do. The customer, we got to find what do they need and want that they value. And they value service. Like, that's why we have the best wholesale supports in the world. They value having a sales rep with them and able to hear and understand the sorts of contract needs that they have. And then that starts to put us in a position where, when we see what I'd argue is the biggest system change in the industry, we just have to take the same approach. We listen, act, listen. So we get all the stakeholders involved. It's the CELIAs and the ITAs and ARC and IATA. And then we work with the TMCs and the OBTs and the corporations and the GDSs and say, how are we going to ultimately build something that's going to be valued and consumed by our customers, and they're going to appreciate it. Not we're going to just build something and hopefully it works. So I think the key there is that we're going to make sure it can be serviced, and I think that's the key piece. We sell pretty well in EDIFACT, but servicing is going to be a benefit across all channels, because our distribution strategy is simple: meet the customer in their channel of choice. We're not going to tell them where to go, but then we're going to have the best sort of channel for them to choose from. And as you know, you use in many cases all of the channels, our very best customers. So that's when we just keep that in mind, then we want to make sure what you experience on delta.com, what you experience in a GDS or OBT or a TMC display, it's going to look and feel similar. It can't be perfect, but I think we're far enough along with technology and approach that we can make that happen. But it's arguably, I know some people said we're slow. We're just going to make sure it works.
Yeah.
And working would be a good super bar to reach.
Yes.
It is amazing, though, because like you talk about service. I mean, some of the other initiatives just didn't include service as part of that kind of standard bar.
Terrible.
Yeah.
But it is interesting because, I mean, NDC should be able to go way beyond that level. I know you're talking about meeting people where they are with the functionality that's at least at base level. What about that next level, Steve? When will travelers start to see that? Personalized offers, dynamic offers, bundles. We're nowhere near that from a customer perspective.
People are testing it in very minor ways around the world. But I mean, those percentages are like like in the low, less
Tiny.
than single digits.
Yeah.
So that's okay, because I think what's happening is people are, as they're testing, they're realizing some of the things just don't work. We will, at Investor Day in a few weeks here, we'll sort of lay out a little more clearly what we kind of envision what our next generation of pricing can look like.
Okay.
But I don't see us in that space materially until probably toward the end of 25, and we can begin to get a little bit more testing in place and making sure, again, it can be served. And not just for third-party NDC, also for res.com, the app. We want it to be consistent, so we're not scrambling to service something that we put out there. So it's going to be a journey, but we like what we're hearing from our partners. Yeah, we're gonna keep building it to their specs.
Well, and we met with and had Steve Sing on, talking about his vision with Perfect Trip and all that. And I welcome that. I mean, I think that's great with, like you said, Investor Day coming. We'll be watching with interest, because I think Delta's in a really great position to offer some leadership and some guidance about that, that the industry can effectively follow, because people are really, as you know, right, the industry needs that too. Everybody needs to kind of have so that even the distribution system, agencies can plan and say, okay,
think about data. I remember that was one of the first things people are like, okay, we need reps, we need service, but the data is a disaster. Everybody's talking past each other. So we focused a lot, not on trying to standardize it, but also make it accessible. So we were the first to put like customer reporting. We call it Sky Partner Reporting. And it was like, you'd think it was like the internet just got invented, because it was, people can see on-time demand and get the reports. But that's what the customer wanted. And I think that's what we have to keep kind of thinking about. And again, we don't view this as a sprint or a race. I mean, if that effect lasted 30, 40 years. So
yeah, still chugging.
Yeah, it's still chugging. So we'll make sure it's done right.
Okay, good, smart. So you talk to customers in all different forums and everything. Got to ask the question, like, so what do you hear about? What could the industry be doing better? What do you hear when people say, "Oh, this is what I want from Delta and don't get"? I mean, is there anything that comes to mind that's kind of in that category? With an eye of what's to come.
We hear pretty consistently, and that if this is news to you guys, then you're not paying attention. One, get me through the airport fast. I mean, speed. We view the airport as how fast can we get people through. And that's not an easy. It's not an easy aspirations. But so we were first to be investing in Clear, first with digital ID, trying to make sure that piece of the equation can go as fast and as smooth as possible. And I think we see green shoots. I think that ultimately will be a good answer for us. But then we have to make sure that the airport themselves, we have to work with the TSA and the government in many cases. And they're actually pretty good partners. So we don't just say, hey, we blame it on you. We work with them and say, okay, digital ID is working. Now let's make sure the back systems are fast, and let's get people out of that tension area, which is one of the most tense areas through the whole travel ribbon. So I think making sure we continue to use digital applications to make that experience easy. Like, we need everybody on the app, because the app will pretty much tell you everything you need to know. Yeah. So that'll be one of the pieces that we need to do, because then you have less people asking, well, where's my gate? Where's my connecting gate? It's all right there. We have the data. Yeah. We just need to make it easy for our customers to access. So that was one thing. I think the other thing is, and I don't know if it's back to traveler friction days pre-COVID, or maybe there's been changes since COVID, but people want modern and more premium airport experience. And we made some pretty big bets when COVID hit. We put over $12 billion of investment in our real estate team for the airports. And in retrospect, great decision. We didn't know if we'd have an industry, but in
Talk about uncertainty. Wow.
Empty airports, no labor supply issues, no inflation. We were able to get these projects done fast, on time, on budget, or often ahead of budget or ahead of time. And now I'd argue we have some of the best facilities in the country. If you've been to LA or LaGuardia or Salt Lake City, these are completely brand new airports with the reconfigurations, and people like that. And then when you put in clubs, and by the way, we learned that from Virgin Atlantic. When you put good clubs in, people value it versus it's just a resting area. So we invest in those. We keep expanding them. We have the most number of clubs, and hopefully you guys have seen the new Delta One Lounge in JFK. And we just opened the one in LA. This is world class. I'll be up in Boston that's my hardest part of my job, is opening up a new Sky Club. Up in Boston to open up the D1 Lounge there in a few weeks. And then Seattle will be in the first quarter of 25. And then we'll keep investing more into the more of the center core hubs as well. So I think that airport experience people want, and they value having that choice to buy up. Think about our seats, like in the air. Okay. Who doesn't like fast free Wi-Fi? By the way, it saves corporations a lot of money too, because they don't have to expense it. And it feels like you're at home, and you can just access it. So having the comforts, not even just from your in-flight entertainment system, but you can choose whether you want to be in Delta One or Delta Premium Select or Comfort Plus. And leisure travelers are buying them as well. So it's pretty, like, I wish we had more. It's pretty exciting to see both leisure and business demand valuing really options and choices. And it's just great. Customers like it. They're happier. So we see speed and sort of more premium experiences, and it's not just made up. This was happening before COVID, because there was a shift in consumer spending from goods to services. Obviously, in COVID, it was all goods.
Right.
But now that trend is already coming back. Mm-hmm. And within services, it's travel. Within travel, it's international travel. So there's there's still, I think, a lot of healthy demand for Delta's customers.
Yeah, one note on when you're talking about investing during COVID, for the companies that were able to do that. I worked with another airline that basically ripped out had two capital projects that kind of survived during the pandemic. One was putting out in a whole new red system, because it was like, why not? This is the perfect time. We don't have many customers. We can test and learn. If we make any mistakes, it's going to be with low volume. And the other was the whole project around their loyalty program, which was the one I was working on. But it was very interesting because, again, and we've heard that across the board for the companies that have come out of this. Maybe had a little bit of certainly had the means, but also the foresight to say, hey, look, what can I do during this time? It's okay. I'm going to be hopeful and say, I can look out a year or 2 years and say, okay, we're going to figure out a way to get through this as a society even, but for now, how can I keep a core group of people? And Delta was in a position too to actually keep everybody employed, which was not everybody's position, of course, but that was huge, right? In terms of and the morale while you're working on all this, right? It's
it even blocking the middle seats for that year.
Yes,
when people commercially, it's not a great decision, but from an employee and customer safety perspective, that's kind of the right thing, because we didn't really know exactly what was going on. We bought 1,400 electrostatic sprayers, which if you want one, let me know, because it turned out the disease wasn't transferable on surfaces. So again, you didn't know exactly. But it did kind of galvanize the teams. And as you know, there's a lot of, because of whether it was layoffs or in our case, early out programs, there's a lot of new people in the industry. So we spent a lot of time. We don't have any more training or shortages in any employee group. So we focus making sure that the culture is there, because when you lose, a large portion of your workforce, we got to, it's like back to the merger. We got to get back and making sure that Delta culture, which we really believe is a competitive asset, gets engaged with all of our newer employees.
So we talk about disruption, aside from obviously the pandemic, but you had CrowdStrike, which was, one of those that just, came out of nowhere. Obviously then the ongoing weather disruptions, et cetera, et cetera. Anything, that you've learned as a company just about handling those kinds of disruptions and how you deal with them?
Obviously that's been in the news quite a bit. We were probably a little over-indexed on particular technologies. But by the way, we have a motto here at Delta and Delta Sales to stay humble and hungry. That was a good humble time. I spent the 2 days handing out candy at the Fort Myers airport because I couldn't even get onto a system even if I could help. And but obviously there's a lot of learnings that we'll take from an IT perspective in terms of we think we do a good job, but we got to make sure when we have partners that we have that same level of intensity. So that one we'll put in the humble category.
Well, like you said, but like you said, I think it's much cultural. I mean, people, I think, are pretty much accepting that they're unforeseen things. But it's how you handle it, right? How you deal with it.
Yeah, and transparency. Obviously, we had a very tough 3 days, but we came back to number one completion factor and on time. Like the fourth day, it was already back. But we got so many complimentary letters during that period because the employees oddly shined during that period, and we just appreciated the customers who I think they appreciated that our employees took care of them during the very worst of times, and it made us all feel it took the edge off of the harshness of really failing during those 3 days. But at least our people were able to shine, and that gives you a little sense of pride.
Yeah. Well, again, Steve, thanks for taking some time with us today. Really great discussion. We have a season 2 wrap-up question. We've asked everybody. You're on the road a lot. What's your guilty pleasure when you're out on your 97th Delta flight?
When I travel? I don't know if it's a guilty pleasure, or maybe it's guilty because I want to make sure I stay in shape. But I love running wherever I go.
Oh, that's good.
And whether it's Central Park in New York, or the Monuments in DC, or the Riverfront in Seattle, I'll be in London. There's nothing better than running in Hyde Park and Buckingham Palace.
I was going to ask you, is that
stateliness, and I'm just like, are you kidding me? You don't see that here. So it's a guilty pleasure, but it also helps you stay in shape and keeps that global view first, right and center.
Yeah. Well, Steve, thanks. I appreciate your time and insight, and just keep it up, man.
We'll do.
Thank you, Steve.
Guys.
Steve is the Executive Vice President, Global Sales and Distribution from Delta Airline. Thanks again, Steve.
Take care.
All right, see you.
Very nice. Mike, we will be right back with headwinds and tailwinds.
So, Ed, I want to take a moment and talk about our advisory practice. Travel Again Advisory brings clarity to complex issues, infuses creativity into solutions, and elevates your company with a new level of competitiveness in today's dynamic world. Our practice focuses on 2 key areas: improving results and maximizing shareholder value. Our last project, we helped a very large company with their supplier strategy, helping them to navigate and build plans around changes in the air distribution world, in particular NDC. We ensured that they had the relationships they need, the plan they needed, and the deals their customers wanted, and really understood what the future of the distribution landscape. But that's not all we do. We focus on transactions, helping companies buy or sell, or add on a complementary asset to their current position. But all in all, we do a lot of work in and around the industry. We bring expertise in a whole range of areas. We talked a little bit about it in our podcast today, as we look forward and really try to help you make sure your company is positioned all to optimal value and outcomes. So for more information, contact us at travelagainadvisory.com, and we will be in touch with you to see how we can help you.
All right. Thanks for that, Mike. And now we will wrap with headwinds and tailwinds, where we identify what we think is adding value to the travel industry or taking it away. Mike, I'm up first with tailwind, and I'm going to stay on the Delta trend line here. I know we said goodbye to Steve, and I didn't want to do this one with him on, but they reported financial results for the September quarter and provided its outlook for the December quarter. Highlights of the September quarter, including both GAAP and adjusted metrics, were really amazing. Thanks to the exceptional work of the entire Delta team, continue to lead the industry operationally and financially with double-digit operating margin and nearly $3 billion of free cash flow generation year to date. Mike, that's right from their quarterly statement. They had an amazing quarter, a great sign, I think, for the broader industry, and a great sign for Delta continuing to take the lead in the airline space. Any thoughts on that one, Mike?
No, just that the outlook's really good. I mean, clearly the major airlines are, a bellwether for the industry overall. Delta's certainly a bellwether for the airline industry. So, we follow them closely, of course, and, great to see great results. Steve mentioned, I think they put back $1 billion into their employee profit sharing, which is also, a really great example of, how companies can motivate and how that virtuous circle could really work for you and help you navigate through difficult times when you have them. But that's a good lead into our headwind, because the headwind articles or things I chose were more about the state of affairs with low-cost carriers. And as much as we need a very healthy U.S. airline industry, we need a very healthy aviation industry globally, of course. It helps fuel basically all business everywhere, and it certainly gets us to all the places we need to go. Having competition is healthy and important too. And, the low-cost carriers have all been really falling on harder times. Some of that, I think, is reflected in some of the choices that customers make now in this environment about the product they're choosing, the airlines they're choosing. Are they choosing reliability and a certain amount of let's say, comfort and or benefit that they can't necessarily get with a low-cost carrier? But there's a role, and we've seen the struggles Southwest has been having, JetBlue has been having, Spirit, Frontier, etc. And I think they're all trying to find their way. But we need them to, or we need certainly a segment of them, a portion of them to, because, again, it helps keep a healthy check and balance in the industry. So I think, for me, it's more of a headwind of just saying, having a lot of, having also potentially carriers, shutting down or experiencing real, it doesn't help the industry either. We need healthy competition and kind of all the segments of the industry. But we will, we'll stay tuned for as long as the overall demand stays healthy. There's a pretty good chance, some of those or most or all of them will find their way.
Okay, Mike, thanks for that. And that is our show. Thanks again to our sponsor, Safe Travel RX, and we will see you back here next week. Have a good night, Mike.
See you, Steve. See Steve and Ed.
Bye, everybody.